What's up, guys? It is Ben with 2020 election predictions, and I thought that I would just go live. I just posted a video explaining why I think it is possible that Trump is going to win 350 or more electoral votes on the election night. And I think that some people were kind of confused what I meant. Some people thought I was like very biased in favor of Trump. What I meant is like this is what it's going to appear that it's going to look like. I think it is very possible that it's going to look like Trump is up in all the swing states, maybe even states that you wouldn't even expect. Like Trump could be up in Colorado, New Mexico. I mean, you name it. And this is because it's going to take a while for the mail-in ballots to get processed. There's been many news articles about this that they call it the red MIRAGE, and I think this is something that not a lot of people are talking about. But with mail-in voting, it's not going to be like a normal election. I understand that in certain states, like in certain groups like the military, there's been a lot of absentee ballots, but having universal mail-in ballots is going to be unprecedented in recent history. I mean, I just don't think that people are anticipating how much of a debacle that the 2020 election could be. And in this video, what I explained is that Trump could appear up a lot on election night. And some media outlets could call the presidential election in Trump's favor. But then as we start to get more of the mail-in ballots coming in, which typically I think that more Democrats are going to do mail-in voting just because the coronavirus is so politicized and like just all these different things. And I think that more Trump voters are going to vote in person. So then I think we're going to see a blue drip of voters coming in. And so I think that'll be very interesting. Let me just kind of look at the comments. Hi, is this pre-recorded? No, this is live right now. Right now, I only have 3 people in right now. I think this might be kind of not a great time for people to do a live stream. So I might end this pretty early if there's not going to be a ton of people on. But I just like to do live streams so that I can answer all y'all's questions. Anything to do with politics in the chat. So I was kind of talking about how mail-in voting is going to affect the 2020 election. I think it's going to have a pretty great effect just in terms of like when the votes are going to be counted. I don't think that there's going to be massive voter fraud, but I think that will be an issue that's going to be brought up for sure. But I think it's mainly that it could take like a week or even 2 weeks. I mean, it could take weeks for us to know who the president of the United States is. And this happened in 2000 in the Bush v. Gore election. And I mean, it was kind of crazy. And it ended up having to go to the Supreme Court where only 9 people kind of decided who the next president would be indirectly. So I really hope that the election is not as bad as I think it will be. Maybe I'm a pessimist, but I mean, I just think that people really aren't talking about it now. What is going to be obvious when we get to the election day, which will be like we aren't going to know who the president is on November 3rd or November 4th or November 5th. I think it's going to take a week or two. So we are just going to kind of be like sitting here not knowing who the next president is. And I mean, people get very emotionally invested in these things. I think there's going to be protests on the street and stuff. And by no means am I encouraging any of this stuff because but I just feel like people are just so pent up. I mean, we've seen with some of the Black Lives Matter protests. I mean, like people are very passionate about like all political issues, and it's different for different people. Like maybe it's racial justice issues, maybe it's the tax issues, maybe it's the environmental issues, maybe it's like foreign policy. But people have a lot riding on this election, and the fact that we might not know who our next president is on November 3rd, I think is going to be a pretty big deal. All right, so we have Christopher here. Christopher was one of the best, one of my greatest supporters the other in my last live video, so I really appreciate that. the idea of it dragging on for weeks is rather exhausting. Yeah, I think people are going to be so tired of it because, I mean, we've been in campaign mode for a long time. I mean, ever since I would say the beginning of 2019 is when some of the candidates announced for presidency. Like I think Warren did it on New Year's of 2019. I mean, we've been in campaign mode for a while. I think people are just really ready for the election, just like noise and just everything for it to be all over. But I think it could drag out for a while. Who do you think mail-in voting is going to affect the most? So I think that probably more mail-in ballots are going to be are going to be for Biden, and the only reason that I'm saying that is because I think that more Democrats are going to vote by mail, and like I don't necessarily have a ton of data to back this up, but I think that because the coronavirus is so politicized, and I think that like more Trump voters are going to want to vote in person, and I think that like more people on the left who I think are kind of like taking the virus more seriously, like just very like concerned about it, and I mean that's for a host of different reasons. I think that they'll be more inclined to vote by mail. I think that the votes by mail are probably going to be pretty safe on average. However, those votes by mail, and I mean, we've seen this in past cases, they are going to take longer to get processed and they're going to take longer to get counted. So when we look at the TV screens, we're going to see states that we typically thought that Biden would have won, that on the TV screen they will be red. So I think it's going to be a very interesting thing that we're going to have to look at. So let me kind of go to the chat for a little while. Red Donkey Projections, hey there, thank you so much. I think we're going to do a collaboration pretty soon, so I wanted to announce that here. Red Donkey Projections is another channel that I have a lot of respect for. I agree with them on a lot of different things in terms of their predictions, but I think on some tiny things I might have some slight disagreements. So I think we're going to talk about that. And I think we'll get that video out on Sunday. So y'all should really look at that. Do you think you're being biased in your projections? I really don't think so. I try to make my videos kind of showing both sides. Right now, I think Biden is favored to win. I don't think that makes me against Trump or anything. I think that some people are underestimating Trump's chances. So even though I think right now that Biden does have an advantage over Trump, I don't think that Trump should be counted out. And I think a lot of people counted out Trump in 2016. And obviously they were mostly wrong. You did a really good job of not being biased. I would have no idea who you're voting for, which is not the case with LT or Red Eagle. I really appreciate that, Christopher. Christopher was one of the main people who did the super chats in my last session, so I really appreciate that. And now that I have about 18 people in here, I just want to remind y'all that the main purpose of me doing the lives is kind of answer y'all's questions, and one way that y'all can do that is through the super chat function. So you hit the $ that's like right under the chat function, and you can just do like $2 or $3 and just ask a question, and I'll kind of focus on that subject for about like three to 5 minutes, just because if you're really interested in a subject. Who do you think is more accurate, Red Eagle or LTE? Well, I don't want to talk badly about kind of like the other people. I wouldn't really call them like my competition, but we're all friends. I would probably say less LTE is probably a little less biased than Red Eagle, but I watch both of them. I think they're both very entertaining, and I think that they both add things that they add things that like I'm learning from them. So that's something that I definitely tune in for. So do y'all have any questions? Y'all can either just do a chat or super chat. One thing I think that's pretty interesting right now is the betting odds. That's one thing that I do look at pretty quick, because I think that the betting odds kind of offer something that the polls don't. The polls just take a snapshot in time of what's happening, and I think the betting odds can be more accurate just in terms of other things. So who do you think will win in 2024? Right now, so I'm predicting that Biden will probably win, but I think that Kamala Harris and another Republican will be on the ballot, and I think it'll be very, very close. Christopher, thank you so much. You're starting out the day right. If y'all just look at the chat, Christopher, you see a super chat, all green, all highlighted. We just love to see it. All right. Do you feel like Minnesota is more likely to go red or Georgia is more likely to go blue? This is actually a very, very, very good question, Christopher. I think that right now, Minnesota is probably more likely to go red. I think that Georgia obviously has been trending leftward for a while. Minnesota has been trending rightward for a while. Donald Trump won Georgia by 5 points in 2016. I expect Donald Trump to win the state of Georgia between 1 and 3 points right now. And that's probably a similar margin that I expect Biden to win Minnesota right now. So I think that's a very, very good question. I'm sorry I'm not giving you a great answer. But what we have seen with the Trump campaign is that they're actually pulling money out of states like Arizona and Michigan, but they're still fundraising in Minnesota, which means that the Trump campaign, their internal polling is showing that Minnesota might be closer than states like Arizona and Michigan. And if we actually look at the polls, I mean, we've recently had polls, and this was after the like all the protests that happened in Minneapolis, that maybe there was some backlash to some of the riots and stuff. So I think that Minnesota is actually going to be closer than Michigan. Georgia, on the other hand, I think Biden is not going to focus a lot on Georgia because he doesn't need Georgia to win. So I think it's going to be a lot of like where people are putting their focus. So I think Trump's probably going to put a lot more focus on Minnesota than Biden is on Georgia. So right now, I think Minnesota is probably more likely to go red. I'm actually curious to look at the predicted numbers on this because that's kind of like people just bet on specific states. So let's see. I'm looking at it right now. Right now, you can buy Minnesota for 68 cents for Biden and 65% for Trump. So it's pretty even. Like right now, they say Georgia's slightly more likely to go for Biden than Minnesota is for Trump. I think it's pretty interesting. So thank you so much, Christopher, for getting the ball rolling on the super chats. We have 27 people right now. This is really great. I would love for y'all to do some chats, do some super chats like Christopher. It's really not that hard to do, just like $5, $2, $3. You just hit the dollar sign on the bottom, and it'll come up a thing. You can do a super sticker, super chat. I would really encourage y'all to do a super chat. And then you just kind of just enter in your credit card information, and it's just really safe because it's through YouTube. All right, so let's look at some of these other chats. If the so-called red mirage happens, we the people should bombard. Okay, interesting. Who do you think will win the Senate in 2022? So I think it has everything to do with who wins the presidency in 2020. I think if Biden wins, I think it'll be pretty even. But we saw in 2022 that every state that Trump won went Republican on the Senate level, and every state that Hillary Clinton won went Democrat on the Senate level. I think it's going to be hard for Republicans to defend seats in Wisconsin with Ron Johnson and Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania. So I think probably that the Democrats will have an advantage going into 2022. I think in 2024 that the Republicans will have an advantage. But it's just really interesting looking at the Senate, which kind of unique to the Senate is that they have their elections every 6 years. So it's kind of like staggered. There's only a third of senators up for re-election every 2 years, unlike the House when every single House member is up for re-election. So definitely interesting there. Good question, Joe Obama. What do you think of Biden's fundraising numbers? Well, I thought that Biden's fundraising numbers were very, very good. And I think this shows that there's a lot of energy on the Democratic side. I mean, Joe Biden is raising more money than Hillary Clinton. I think this is kind of surprising people because I think people assumed that like Hillary Clinton was going to get a lot more energy because like she was supposed to be the first female president. And I mean, Joe Biden's been in politics for forever. He's not just like a super charismatic, inspirational guy. But I think with his fundraising numbers represent probably is Joe Biden picking Kamala Harris as his VP, and then also just like a lot of like anti-Trump energy in it, and that also came probably a lot during the Democratic National Convention where they hosted an array of different candidates. All right, so I'm not seeing any super chats right now. Christopher definitely got the ball rolling at first, but I kind of just answered some of these chats. But since there's so many, it's going to be hard to focus on a lot of them. So if you want me to focus on something a lot, for sure do a super chat. Let me look here. So I don't think Texas is going to flip in 2020 or 2020. I think in 2024 it's going to be like almost a pure toss-up. I think the Republicans will hold a slight advantage. In 2028, I think Texas will be a pure toss-up. And if the Democrats win Texas, I don't really see a huge path for the Republicans to win the presidency, because Texas it's going to get more electoral votes in the future. And one thing I think that a lot of people aren't really talking about this because it's not super interesting, but I think it will have a huge effect, is the fact that after the 2020 census, all of these states are going to change in terms of their population numbers, and this will affect the electoral college, which has everything to do with how we elect the president. The popular vote doesn't matter, so it definitely matters kind of where the populations are. Texas is going to gain a lot of electoral votes because a lot of people are moving into it. So if Texas goes blue, I don't think the Republicans ever have a path. I think Trump's going to win in 2020. I think that probably whoever will be the challenger, the Republican challenger in 2024, will have a slight advantage. But I think in 2028, it's going to be a pure toss-up. And in 2028, it might lean towards the Democrats too. All right, so let me kind of look in the chats right now. If you want me to focus on something, definitely do a super chat just so I can make sure that that function works. Apparently, Christopher is the only one that knows how the super chat function works, but thank you to Christopher. When do you think the Republican Party will be a non-contender for president? I mean, I think if Texas goes blue, it's going to be very hard for the Republicans to win. I think this will happen probably in 2028. Who do you think would win an election, Tucker Carlson versus Biden in 2020? I think that Joe Biden would probably win, but like I don't think Biden's going to run in 2024. I think that Kamala Harris will probably take his spot if Biden does get elected president in 2020. I don't think Tucker Carlson's going to be like a very good candidate in terms of like getting support from kind of the swing voters. I understand that he's very successful in his Fox News like primetime slot, but I mean, I really don't. I just don't see him like kind of expanding his support to like more people who like aren't just like Fox News viewers. So I really think it'll be a mistake for the Republicans if they elect Tucker Carlson. Yeah, I agree that Republicans will have to appeal to the Latino population if they want to win future elections. That's the fastest growing demographic group. And I think that a lot of Hispanics, like in general, their values like line up with some conservative values. So yeah, let's see. All right, I'm seeing a bunch of different chats. So if y'all want me to focus on just like one subject, it would be helpful to do like a super chat. Let's see. Speaking from a personal standpoint, do you think Biden or Hillary is a stronger candidate? I think a lot more people like hated Hillary Clinton than they hate Biden, but definitely in terms of like charisma and energy, I think Hillary Clinton had the advantage. I think that Trump probably was in a better position to win in 2016 just because like he didn't have a record to go off. And like, I mean, while I think like Trump's record, I mean, he does have a lot of things to his name. I think it gives the Democrats a lot more like things to kind of like paint. Like Biden's like whole campaign entry was kind of blaming him for like the violence at Charlottesville. And like, I think that's probably a more effective campaign strategy than like what the Hillary Clinton campaign tried to do in 2016. Let's see. What do you think the effects of gerrymandering for 2020 will have over the next decade for each party? So I think gerrymandering is going to become less of a thing. In 2010, um, I think when the Republicans won, a lot of state legislators they got to draw a lot of the maps, but 2010 was kind of a wave year for the Republicans. I don't think 2020 will be like as much. So I think it'll probably be even. It would be very interesting to see if like the Democrats, when they win the state legislators, are they going to gerrymander on their own? Because they've been like kind of criticizing the Republicans for doing the same thing. But in the past, Democrats have like been very much guilty of doing the gerrymandering too. But it's just like right now in our current political moment, when most state legislators are controlled by Republicans, they've kind of done more of the drawing, and I mean that definitely did help them in kind of the House elections, like in 2016 and like 2014. But yeah. Do you think Trump's veteran comments will hurt him? Well, if they can be verified, then 100% yes. I mean, I think those are super damaging comments. I mean, if Trump did say them, but I think it's now going to be a matter of, do people believe Trump and his denials, or do they believe kind of like what the media is saying? And I mean, I don't know if we'll ever find out, but like if there's like a leaked tape or something, then I honestly think Trump is done. I mean, I think Trump is kind of like circled around a lot of his scandals before, but I think this is going to be very hard for him to overcome. Do you think if he wins by a landslide on election day, then loses it 2 to 3 days later, it will end in complete chaos and probably a civil war? I mean, that's kind of what I've talked about. I mean, I never want to say that like I think our country is going to be in a civil war, because I think that's a very pessimistic view to have. But I think there's just a lot of anger right now, especially kind of with the lockdowns and the quarantines with the coronavirus. Like, I mean, we saw all the energy there was kind of for the Black Lives Matter protest. I mean, I think we could maybe see a counter protest kind of like for the Trump people if Trump is up by a lot on November 3rd, but then a week later, as a lot of votes start to come in, and we see that the Biden actually wins, I think that there could be a lot of chaos. All right, guys, so I'm at 22 minutes right now. I'm probably going to hop off pretty soon, but if y'all want to do any last super chats, what you do is like you see kind of under where the live chat is. You see there's a dollar sign. You can say show your support for 2020 election predictions, and you can send a highlighted message that you can say whatever you want to. For example, Christopher just did one, so this is what I'm going to focus on for the next 5 minutes. And I'll probably have time for one more after this. Do you think Biden will be able to hold his Florida lead? Florida is notoriously a pain in the ass for polling. This is true. So in 2018, the polls were pretty wrong. The polls had, on the Senate level and on the governor's level, they had Ron DeSantis and Rick Scott down to Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson, but they ended up winning. Right now, I definitely think that Biden has an advantage in Florida. I mean, looking at just the different segmented populations of this polls, it appears that Trump is losing support on the senior vote, 65 and older, which is very concentrated in Florida. And when people were getting interviewed asking why, Trump voters in 2016, they were saying that they didn't think Trump handled the coronavirus situation very well, which I totally understand. That I understand how that has hurt his numbers. I think that if the coronavirus kind of starts to dwindle and the economy starts to open back in Florida, then I think that Trump will probably win it. But if we're still kind of in the lockdown and coronavirus is still a threat, I think that's going to be fresh on people's minds, and I think a lot of like swing voters might associate that with Trump's response. So I think that will a lot depend on what happens with the coronavirus. Thank you so much, Christopher, for your continued support. That's definitely really cool. And I hope other people start to follow you too, because you're a very generous guy with your super chat. So maybe some of these other people commenting will send a super chat pretty soon as well. All right. So, uh, all right. Well, unless people kind of have any last thoughts or any kind of last final questions that you want me to answer, I'm probably going to hop off. Typically, I try to limit these to about 30 minutes. We're at 25 minutes right now. But let's see. I'll answer just one last question here in the chat. And if you have a super chat, then we'll do it. Do I think that a Democratic socialist will be elected in 2024? If Biden loses, I think that like a Bernie Sanders type candidate, like in that mold, will run. Will Joe Biden run in 2024? I don't think so. I think that Kamala Harris will probably run if Biden wins, just because Biden's getting very old. He'll be 81, I think. On election day, maybe 82. What percentage do you think unemployment will be by November? So I think the numbers came out. It's about a little over 8%. I expect on election day maybe 7%. I mean, I think it's still going to be pretty high just because I think the coronavirus has affected the economy so much. Okay, I understand that Biden has said he's going to run for 2 terms. I think when push comes to shove, it's not going to happen. I mean, I think if Biden said right now that he would be a one-term candidate, that would hurt him politically because people kind of want to see a candidate that's like strong and stuff. And I think that people will definitely want to see kind of the first woman president. So I don't think that Biden would necessarily try to like wait there for like 2 terms and kind of like take the spot of like where maybe like the first female president could run. Because like if like Nikki Haley were to run against Joe Biden, I think that the Democrats would be like very scared that like, oh, a Republican would be the first female president, because I think that's something that they kind of want to do first. What do you think will be the aftermath if the Supreme Court would interfere in the 2020 election and end up voting for Trump? I mean, I think that would be crazy. Honestly, I think if it went to the Supreme Court, I think that John Roberts would probably side with the more liberal side, just because I think that in 2000 it kind of happened where the Supreme Court decided it. But I think a lot of people would be very suspicious that like 2 Trump appointed judges, if they kind of were to interfere in the 2020 election, help Trump, I think a lot of people would like be asking questions, and there would be protests, there'd be riots. I mean, it would just be a mess. I'd much rather the election be decided by the 200 million voters who I think could vote in this election, rather than just 9 random Supreme Court justices. I mean, I know it's not random. All right. What would be the biggest mistake for Biden to do at this point in the election? Probably just like mess up in like the debates and the interviews, or maybe like not fully condemn kind of the violence happening. Sorry, Joey Rogers, sorry. Why do people let their demographics decide who they support? I don't think identity politics is good, and I hope that people kind of elect people or vote for people based on their like policies and maybe even their character, not identity politics. All right, guys. So I think I'm gonna head off now. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what the best time for me to do live streams is, because I would love to have your input. And I'll see y'all later, and be on the lookout for some of my new videos coming up. And thank y'all all for the super chats. I guess it was only Christopher this time. Big thumbs up to Christopher, biggest fan ever. Hopefully some of y'all will join too. But thank y'all so much for being very nice and cordial in the comments and asking very good questions. Very, very good questions. My favorite question was Christopher's questions, asking about, do I think Minnesota is more likely to go blue, or Minnesota is more likely to go red, or Georgia more likely to go blue? I think that was a very, very good question. All right, guys. See y'all later, and hope y'all have a great day.